In April 2013, as Frederick Pierucci stepped off a aircraft at New York's JFK Airport for a usual industry travel, he was withdrawn and handcuffed by uniformed men. The 45-year-old execution for Alstom, a France power and transportation team, was later managed to the FBI house in Manhattan, wherever the cause for his detention became precise. In 2003-4, a Fed attorney explainable, Pierucci had authorized bribes to Indonesia officials to safe a agreement for boilers at a force factory. The was real. At the period, he was work for an Alstom affiliate in Connecticut. Bribe was overall experience at the business later. Pierucci had estimated he was secure of proceedings since he had not organized the Indonesia kickbacks, just signed off on them. And with later, Alstom had confident the U.S. Judiciary Division how it was clean up its instrument. Pierucci was to expend more than rather than 5 years in the clutches of the US judiciary framework. His history illustrates the risks florid by overseas businessmen who, occasionally without the knowledge to them, are charged of violating U.S. Act. The U.S. by the government has length been corpse severe on corrupt practices. In 1977 it adopted the Overseas Pervert Practices Act, FCPA, the planet's at first ban on bribery overseas officials. In another place, companies extended to get off in it for many decades. In the 2000s, yet, fueled by a campaigning by the OECD, some advanced nations began to clip downward. Company operation of Overseas Act enforcement agencies helping the U.S. by the government exportable its against corruption driving. Alstom is a instance in spot. The Judiciary Division prosecuted the business following Italian, Switzerland and UK prosecutorial had vulnerable the business's world bribe schema. US investigators include their own way of chasing white-collar criminality. Instead of launch raids on business offices, they begin by request for company operation. The query is courteous but the main communication cruel, assist us accuse by yourself and we will not go downward as difficult as we might differently. But his consultation to company operate was neglected. After how year, Einbinder was let go. The attorney proposed his pit a transactions. Pierucci could be liberated if he coordinated to act as a open secret FBI informer during Alstom. He rejected the propose. The following date, Pierucci was rejected collateral and passed to the Wyatt Arrest Installation, a top security jail in Genus Isle. Arrest facility were not Pierucci's just, or though major, anxiety. He had no concept how length he would remain within. The Connecticut-based attorney equipped and paid by Alstom to protect him told his top expect for produce was to beg those guilty in a transactions in prosecutorial. Monumentality mistake. The consultation may include bin audio, but down there was a issue. Pierucci requested to claim how he was far downward the circuit of team. Yet he quickly implemented how the Alstom control would never go on in a link of defense how involved them. At first I was lucky how Alstom took accusation of my defense, it was just after how I saw it had been a monumentality mistake, Pierucci says. As months went by, the news story got worse. Some Alstom management team were detained on bribe extortion. If one of them affected a appeal transactions at first, Pierucci's own bargaining stance would be undermined. He was in a racing in the some defendants to meet the prosecutorial. Uncertain on the following move, Pierucci rotated to his cellmates for legislative consultation. Jackie, a vet of the France Connect narcotic circle who had 36-year expertise of the U.S. criminal framework, alerted him versus receiving an outdoor appeal, wherever defendants mark off their alleged virginity out of any warranty on a verdict. Which Pierucci requested, Jackie told, was a mandatory appeal how commits prosecutorial to a particular prison period. While he relayed the query to his attorney, he was said, properly, how Connecticut just recognized outdoor pleas. But the attorney mind he had a gents treaty in the area lawyer on a 6-month verdict. If Pierucci acknowledged single fault, he could wait to be complimentary by October. The option was to go to test and hazard up to 125 years in prison. The blood pressure he was testing was far of distinctive. Thanks to two obligatory sentences, U.S. prosecutorial own enormous powers. One of Pierucci's comrade detainees, who had been trapped in drugs but had no early convictions, hanging by himself in his cage following Creature proposed 15-year as an discovery request. In July 2013, hoping for produce during months, Pierucci bowed to the unavoidable and pleaded those guilty. The appeal transactions, yet, driven slight ease. Now how Pierucci was a condemned penal, Alstom cut him friable. His lack, the exemption email recite, imperils the transactions of the essence that you conduct and makes it unfeasible to support our contractual relationship. In supplement, it marked, his misdeeds work resist to the values and the ethical of the team. In addition, Creature seemingly fired for not laid up for job time in prison. Pierucci found it a bit wealthy to be lectured on consistency by a company how had betrothed in corrupt practices in lot countries and been blocked above these practices by the Planet Banking. But he recognizes how the business had slight selection. It done feeling for Pierucci's bosses to accuse him as lot as they could. Meantime, Pierucci's arrest showed no mark of end. October came and went. 6 months rotated in a year, out of any news story on sentence. In a volume on the instance, L'Éwige Américaine, This Us Pitfall, he compares his hardship to Creature jammed in an infinite tube in slick walls, anything to conduct on for. In June 2014, Pierucci was liberated following friends put up their homes as ties and after how year went household to Paris. But he was yet to be condemned, and the opportunity of more than prison period yet suspended above him. The ambiguity lasted else 3 years. In September 2017, Pierucci flew behind to Connecticut for sentence. The magistrate gave him 30 months. He did not be a complimentary man before deceased 2018, while he walked out of the Pittsburgh jail wherever he had serviced the other part of his verdict. Paranoid. Pierucci believes he was a pledge in 3 greater battles in world economical and policy aftermath. The at first is the struggle among the U.S. Judiciary Division and Alstom, that leading in full letting by the France business. In deceased 2014, it acknowledged possessing pay $75 bribes above a 10 years, in a schema outlined by prosecutorial as astonishing in its width, its impudence and its world-ensuing consequences. Alstom populated the instance for $770 meter, £580 meter, Euro 670 meter, the greatest ever FCPA penalty superimposed by the division. The arrests of Pierucci and some link were key in break Alstom's impedance. As later Assistant Lawyer General Leslie Caldwell told, it was just following the division openly loaded several Alstom management team, 3 years following the inquiry began, how the business eventually company operated. The other fight how Pierucci believes affecting his destiny was the buy of largest of Alstom by its U.S. competing General Electrical, GE. The industry legend and the legislative cases deployed in lockstep. Alstom lug Patrick Crone announced plans to sell the force industry, 75% of the business, in medium 2014, while it was precise how the business was in the Judiciary Division's crosshairs. Shareholders adopted the selling to GE how December. 3 days after, the community in the Bribe instance took Alstom's top yellow medal off the crochet. Pierucci is amongst lot in France who complained how the Judiciary Division was helped GE by compliance the blood pressure on Alstom before the selling was full. Onto a France Parliament paper published recent year, the risk of an enormous penalty certainly besieged Mr. Crone's judgment. Crone has ever furiously rejected the statement. We completely did not do the transactions in answer to any straight blood pressure on by myself or nobody else, he said. MP's Alstom's force operative, he insists, were sold out for the top industry reasons. Really the buy is wide seen as a expensive error by GE, and in 2017 its CEO acknowledged as lot. No one is the synchronization definitely suspect. The Judiciary Division could include undertaken the selling in expense in its community in Alstom just since of GE's powerful against corruption recording. In general, we don't wish to prevent companies in powerful accordance programmed of purchasing companies in weaker ones, Khan says. Andrew Spalding, who teaches against corruption law at the College of Richmond, Virginia, notes how for any plot among prosecutorial and GE to job, it would as well include to engage America's freelance judicial. House paranoid, he says. The tertiary fight Pierucci is confident he was drawn in is the largest of all. It is anything less than rather than a fight for world leadership. In the caption of his volume, he describes by himself as a prisoner in the big campaigning of economical destabilization. He is not one in religious America is searching to loosen overseas companies. The is the way largest France analysts and lot political community include outlined the different Alstom sagas above the year. Pierre Laporte, a ex-GE attorney who now planned as Pierucci's affiliate, notes how 70% of firms aim for U.S. against bribery activity are overseas, especially Europe. The FCPA and some laws how use for U.S. national borders, Laporte says, are toolkit of economical dominance. Such as suspicions may audio bloated, but they represent severe concerns in France. Alstom, whose gas turbines force the nation's nuke stations and submarines, is recognized as a strategy property. Lot worry about how if a severe tactful quarrel arose in the U.S., as was the instance for the Iraq warfare, France's independence could be undermined. With his back to Paris, yet, Pierucci has concentrated on the tight question of the struggle versus corrupt practices quite rather than geopolitic force games. He and Laporte include set up a consulting to assist companies remain on the order party of against bribery prosecutorial. One day you identification probable violations, you can put safeguards in location, Pierucci says. He tells his clients to be especially watchful on lie practices by across-the-sea partners or consultants how may put them at hazard. As the achieve of U.S. law expands, overseas management team who struggle the law may so discover how the law wins.